Hi, and welcome back to Catholic Mom and Daughter. I'm Jennifer with my daughter Kate, and December 12th is the feast day of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which is a special day for our family because that is the day that we received a baby miracle from Our Lady.
So we'll tell you that story along with some other interesting facts about Our Lady of Guadalupe, and we're going to share a couple of simple crafts that you can do to celebrate her feast day.
So there are a lot of great books and videos out there about Our Lady of Guadalupe and the story, so I'm not going to go into terrible detail about it today, but I'm going to run through the story quickly in case you haven't heard it before. This story starts in 1531 in Mexico when the Aztec civilization was still going strong. Catholic priests were in the area trying to convert the Aztecs because they were still practicing human sacrifices. So on December 9th, 1531, one of the Mexicans who had converted and was Catholic was walking to Mass, and he saw a beautiful young girl appear on the hill, and she called him over and she said, "Hey, you know what? I need you to do a favor for me." She knew who he was, she knew his name, and she said, "I would like you to go to the bishop and tell him that I would like a church built on this spot to honor me." And so Juan puts it all together. He realizes, I'm talking to the Blessed Mother, but I don't want to go talk to the bishop. Of course, the bishop didn't want to see him. He was just, a peasant guy, nobody important. So he went back to Our Lady and said, "The bishop won't see me. The bishop said he doesn't believe me, that he needs a miraculous sign." So Our Lady told him to climb the Tepeyac hill, and there he would find a miraculous sign. So he climbed up this hill. It's December in Mexico. It's freezing cold. Nothing is growing. But on the top of the hill, there's the beautiful lady, and there's just a ton of beautiful roses growing. So he gathers up the roses, and Our Lady helps him arrange them in his cloak, which is also called a tilma, and he takes them to the bishop. And when he opened up his poncho or his cloak to show the bishop the beautiful roses, the roses fell out, and immediately the bishop and all the priests, all the people in the room just fell down on their knees in astonishment, because on his tilma, or on his cloak, there was an image, a painting of this beautiful lady, and they immediately recognized her as the Blessed Mother, and they knew that Juan was telling the truth. So now Kate and I are going to come back and tell you some fun things about the image of Our Lady that appeared on Juan Diego's cloak. Okay, so I forgot to say how the story ended. The bishop did have a church built on the top of Tepeyac Hill, and it's still there, and you can still go and visit it. And the best thing was that the Aztec human sacrifices stopped, and over 6 million Native Americans converted to Christianity. One of the things that I love about this story is that you can still go and see Juan Diego's cloak called the tilma. It's on display in the church in Mexico City, and even though a cloak made out of cactus fibers usually is pretty rough work and the fibers break down after 5 or 6 years, Juan Diego's cloak is over 500 years old and it's still going strong.
And there are many other amazing things about the cloak, and there's been tons of studies of it done. So I want to share some of those amazing facts with you today. And the first one is that the black cross Our Lady is wearing identifies her with the missionaries who were in Mexico at that time.
Another really cool fact about the tilma is that the image and the paint, no matter how cold it is or hot it is in the room, the image itself is always at a consistent temperature of 98.6 degrees, which is the average human body temperature.
And the paint of the tilma has also never been identified. It doesn't match with any plant or animal based paint from that time period, and obviously synthetic paints didn't exist, and there also aren't any brush strokes. And the area where the image is completely smooth compared to the coarse fibers of the rest of the cloak.
On the beautiful mantle that Our Lady is wearing in the image, there are stars. It turns out the stars actually form groups that represent the constellations that were visible in the night sky on the night of December 12th, 1531.
And if you take the pattern of the stars and the flowers from the cloak and you transpose that onto a musical staff, it actually makes very beautiful music. And at first they thought that might be something common for the time period, that other artists were doing that, but no one else was doing that. And if you try it on other paintings, it just makes weird noise.
And I think my favorite fact about the tilma in the image is that it defies any attempts to reproduce it. Now, I don't know if this has happened to you, but I've seen pictures, photographs of the tilma, and it looks one way, but then I'll see another picture and it looks different. And I always wondered, what's going on? Why does it look different in these pictures? Well, it turns out I'm not crazy, and this has been a documented fact that the image actually changes colors, kind of like how a bird's feathers might iridesce in the sunlight. The tilma does the same thing. It's been notoriously hard to photograph. It's hard for artists to paint an exact replica of it. One famous artist in the 1700s, Miguel Cabrera, tried on several occasions to paint replications of the tilma image, and he just finally said, this is impossible. No human can capture this image. It keeps changing all the time. So even though he made very many beautiful reproductions, he was never satisfied, and he acknowledged that there's just something unearthly going on with this picture.
During another examination, a scientist was studying the eyes, and he was looking at the eye, and he actually saw a human retina with blood vessels in a painting, and he was completely freaked out.
Yeah, he was looking through an ophthalmoscope just, for fun, and yeah, from what I've read, he was so freaked out he dropped the ophthalmoscope and just ran out of the room. And since then, using modern technology, scientists have been able to study the painted eye, and inside the eye, they have actually seen an image of a group of people, about 13 people, one of which they think is the bishop and one they think is Juan Diego.
So another thing about the tilma is that it's pretty much indestructible. Like we said earlier, it was at first stored in the open air church, completely exposed to the smoke and the humidity and the weather, but it sustained no damage.
That's amazing. And then in 1785, I think, by then they had put it in a glass case for protection, and a worker was cleaning the outside of the case with nitric acid, and oops, there was an accident, and he spilled the nitric acid. It went down inside the case and it damaged the tilma. But what happened was that the area that was damaged, over a period of weeks, it slowly healed itself. So now when you look at it, you can see the tilma, the picture of Our Lady is perfect, and the only evidence of the nitric acid is just a couple of brown dots that are on the cactus fiber tilma that surround the image, but the image itself is fine.
And then in 1921, some guy smuggled a bomb into the church and blew it up, but the tilma was perfectly fine. The glass around it wasn't even broken, even though the church was heavily damaged.
The last thing that we wanted to share, which I love about this image, is that it's the only apparition image of Our Lady in which she appears pregnant. So she's wearing the black sash of the Aztecs in her portrait, and that was their symbol for pregnancy. And scientists who have studied the tilma have also taken the dimensions and measured her abdomen, and it is consistent with a 9-month pregnant woman. And just for kicks, after they made that connection, like, oh, the image shows her pregnant, one of the scientists actually put a stethoscope on her abdomen and heard a heartbeat. That is amazing.
And then on a related note, in 2007, on the same day that abortion was legalized in Mexico, many people witnessed a light coming from that same spot in her abdomen. So that's crazy too.
The glowing light, there are pictures of it. You can see it online. That is really amazing. So because of all this, Our Lady of Guadalupe is the official patroness of the unborn, which leads me to the December 12th baby miracle that happened in our family. And you're just getting me for this part because Kate has gone to study for a chemistry test. One year on December 12th, my mother was pregnant. She had 3 little girls at home already, and the baby was due on December 24th. Now, on that Sunday, my dad had just come home from working all night. He went to bed. My grandmother was there. She had come to help with the birth of the new baby and help take care of the little girls. And since it was a Sunday, my mom went off to Mass. When she got home from Mass, she told my grandmother, she said, you know what, I don't feel very good. I just don't feel right. I'm just going to go lie down in the girls' room for a bit and see if I can feel better. Grandma said, okay, just go get some rest. So she went into the room and they had little bunk beds and she lay down on one of the bunk beds. And then after a while she woke up and she realized that something was very wrong. And what was happening was she was hemorrhaging, and not just a little bit, but so much so that the blood had soaked all the way through the mattress and now it was just pooling on the floor. She called my grandmother, who woke up my dad, who called the emergency operator, and he said, you know, my wife is pregnant, she's hemorrhaging, we need an ambulance. And the operator said, okay, no problem. Tell me who your doctor is and what hospital you need to go to. So he told her, and then the operator said, well, that's actually a problem because our ambulances can't cross the county line. You know, this was back in the day, I think even before 911. But my dad, fortunately, was a volunteer fireman at the time. And so he knew that the firehouse actually had an ambulance. So he called up his buddies at the firehouse. Fortunately, they came right away. They raced a stretcher into the house, loaded up my mom, raced her back out to the ambulance. And then just before they were about to pull out of the driveway, one of the firemen ran back inside the house to talk to my grandmother. And for some reason, all my dad's friends called my grandmother Mom. So he raced back in and he said, Mom, this is not good. They're not going to make it. They're just not going to make it. This is really bad. So off they rushed to the hospital. When they got there, they just raced her into the operating room. They just threw her on the table and started scrubbing down her belly, and the betadine was cold and she was shivering, and her doctor was there and he told her that they were going to put her under general anesthesia because they had to do an emergency C-section. But his last words to her were, Marie, I'm very sorry, but I have to tell you that the baby didn't make it. There's no heartbeat. So that was the last thing she heard, right? In the waiting room, my dad was by himself, and one of the nurses came rushing out and she said, you know, I'm really sorry. I have bad news. The baby didn't make it. It's not looking good for your wife, but we're going to try our best to save her. Back at home, my grandmother was taking care of the little girl. She was quite a character, and not always in a good way. But this is real life. This is a true story, and this is what happened. At the time that she came to visit my parents, she had actually been in a lot of trouble. She had left my grandfather and run off with another man. But wait, it gets worse. The other man was his nephew, Richard. So yes, you heard me right. She ran off and left my grandfather. She ran off with his nephew. Now, they were both from big families. So he was the oldest and she was the youngest of 13. So she was quite a bit younger than he was, but still the whole running off with your nephew thing. So she was not Catholic and she was living a pretty immoral life. But she knew that the situation was bad and she was desperate. So she started to pray. And she asked Our Lady for help. And she said, you know, if my daughter-in-law survives and if this baby survives, then I promise you, I will leave Richard, I will go back to my husband, and I will be a good and faithful wife. So back at the hospital, my mom made it through the surgery. It was kind of touch and go. And she had a long recovery ahead of her. But when she woke up, the doctor was standing there and he was holding a little bundle in his arms. And he said, Marie, I want you to meet your daughter. And the baby was alive. He said that everyone in the operating room was just astonished. They had gone so long without being able to detect any heartbeat that it was a total surprise to all of them that the baby was fine. And maybe the most miraculous part of all is that my grandmother did honor her word. She did go back to her husband. She left Richard. She left her evil ways behind, and she did stay with him just as she had promised. But the kicker is that the baby that survived that day was not me. It was actually my older sister, Kathleen Mary. So my mother not only recovered, she went on to have more children. And Without the intercession of Our Lady, that would not have been possible. I would not be here. My daughter Kate would not be here. So on December 12th, we remember how fragile life is and what a gift it is. And we always remember Our Lady of Guadalupe with the deepest thanks.
So to finish things up today, we have a couple of easy and simple crafts that you can do to celebrate her feast day.
So the first one is making punched paper, which is a traditional Mexican craft. And you can see we made some and they're on the wall behind us. These are super easy to make. They're so much fun. All you need is a pair of scissors and some colored tissue paper, and it literally takes like a minute to make them. So we're going to show you how. Kate is going to walk you through that.
So you're going to start off with a piece of tissue paper that's roughly 8.5 by 11 inches. And you want to fold that in half several times until you get a small square. Then pencil in the designs that you want, making sure to leave the corners empty. It'll look something like this, and then you want to carefully unfold it, and you will have a beautiful cut paper design.
Okay, and the last craft is very simple also. All you need is 2 pieces of cardstock, a copy machine, and a book with a picture of Juan Diego in it. We like The Lady of Guadalupe for this craft by Tommy DePaula. So I used this picture of Juan Diego for the craft. I believe this idea comes from Elizabeth Foss in her book Real Learning. I think that's where I first found this craft, so I have to give her credit. What you do is you make 2 copies of Juan Diego and then you cut them out and splice them together. We'll show you the pictures and walk you through it. But the end result is you get Juan Diego wearing his tilma with the image of Our Lady, and then when you open it up, there are roses on the inside. The first thing you need to do is make 2 copies of your photo of Juan. Then cut out his tilma from one of them. And from the second, just cut out the image of Our Lady so it looks like this. Then take some blank cardstock and you will attach that to the back. I just used a glue stick to glue it on the back. Then decorate that spot with roses, stickers, or have your kids draw them. Then take the tilma that you had cut out and attach it on the bottom with tape so it makes a tape hinge. And there you go, your very own Juan Diego. On the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, if you're in the mood for a food craft, you can also make fake fried ice cream at home.
And we showed you how to do that in another video, and so we'll link that in the description box.
So we hope that you have a very joyous and blessed Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe on December 12th. If you have any fun traditions that you like to do with your family, we'd love to hear about them in the comments box below.
So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.